Well, good morning or indeed good evening to you. My name is Glenn Adamson and I am the co-host of Design and Dialogue, and it is a great pleasure to welcome you all to our 100th episode. We've been doing this for almost exactly a year, started April 1st in 2020 in response to the lockdown, and here we are. And wonderfully enough for us and for all of you, our 100th guest is no less than Sheila Hicks, the extraordinary artist, creator, generative force, who is tuning in from Paris. Hello, Sheila.
On my 100th birthday.
Not quite. Our 100th birthday, not yours. So let me just make a few housekeeping announcements. First of all, as regular visitors or viewers will know, we do mute everyone just to preserve the audio quality. So it will just be Sheila and me speaking, and then also Stephen Burks, my co-host, who's going to join us at the end of the conversation. Also, please do let us know where you are zooming in from in the chat, if you don't mind. And also, if you have any questions for Sheila, put them in the chat at any time and we'll get back to them at the end of the interview. And finally, as always, we will, of course, be posting this interview to our archive, which is on the Friedman Benda Gallery website. So you can watch again or send to friends. And indeed, it will be well worth watching, I'm sure. So Sheila, you are, as we've already established, in Paris and in your home there, which is a special place. And I was wondering if you could first tell us a little bit about your environment.
I'm not going to give you my address because, as I said, we're enjoying in Paris at this point that there's a lockdown and there are no visitors and it's very quiet and peaceful. Imagine we get a lot of work done and nobody's ringing the gates to walk through curiously because we're in a historic courtyard, cobblestone, 300 years old, and where the French Revolution more or less was cooked up, because right next to my studio is where Dr. You know who Dr. Guillotine was?
We certainly know his work, yes.
So Dr. Guillotine managed to get rid of, in a swift engineering new process, managed to get rid of have the ones that the French decided, the French popular revolution decided were not essential to progress in France. And so there was blood running across the cobblestones here. They say, well, he figured out how to decapitate more than one person at a time. So he's kind of a hero of the popular. People come and pay homage to him here in our courtyard. Well, everybody has their heroes.
Indeed. It makes me think, though, Sheila, of the three fates, spinning, measuring, and cutting. And you've certainly been doing a lot of spinning and measuring, so maybe there's a completion of a circuit there.
We have, it's where, but we have romantic side too, because it's where Louis Jordan was singing to Gigi up on the balcony we have a lot of, the Three Musketeers was filmed in this courtyard too, the films. So it's a beloved courtyard in Paris that I tumbled across going to the post office, cutting through from a very modest studio over on Rue Dauphine and trying to find a picturesque way to go to the post office. I came across this courtyard and I did it so frequently that one of the old Breton occupants asked me one day why I didn't move here, because he was leaving. He was retiring and going back to Brittany. And he heard my accent. I bet everybody who's listening today is probably American or at least speaks English. And he heard my accent and he thought, oh, here's a pigeon. Here's somebody I'll be able to convince to pay me with the American accent. She must have some means or else she wouldn't have gotten across the ocean here. And I spent the next 20 years of my life paying him so I could live in his courtyard. And he left for Breton. He left me the Guardian. He left me all these neighbors, and they elected me the president of the copropriété because they thought I didn't understand what was going on.
Oh, you were an easy mark.
And the French, I'm not making fun of the French because I love them, because I have French children. The French all have opinions, and they all express them, and in a very emphatic way. And you have to dialogue and discuss and deliberate everything about aesthetics as well as practicality. It's rather marvelous because they really care about what they're surrounded by. Just like the way they eat, they care about what they're eating, and they care about how it's presented. They're in competition with the Japanese in that sense.
Yeah.
You know, they look at it before they even touch it. I'm just unwinding. I'm just getting into the spirit that we're in Paris, and we're talking from Paris today.
We're just warming up. And I think we're also getting already a little bit of a sense of why you like to live in Paris and why it's become your base.
Well, you know, I left the United States in 1957 to go to Chile. Came back to New Haven, finished my studies, and then left to Mexico until 64. I lived in Mexico. And then I moved here, and I've been here ever since. Now, that's a good long while. I've lived most of my life here in these 3 courtyards and these 3 blocks surrounding, and I am happy to reconnect with the Americans.
Well, we're happy to reconnect with you, of course. I have never had the pleasure of visiting you there in Paris, Sheila, but I would love to someday. But I'm under the impression that you've also created a sort of society in miniature there in your studio and home. I'm under the impression that it's often filled with people speaking various languages and doing various things.
I work with a team. I work with a team of people, and so as not to close myself in too much to one way of thinking and looking, I usually manage to put a team that is multicultural and multilingual. We use French as the common language of the studio. But my first assistant, who's been with me since she finished the École des Beaux-Arts here in Paris, is Greek. 2 more are Korean, 2 more are Breton, and the others are French, local, different provinces of France. And we've had, over this long period of time that I've worked here, I've had lots of schools send me their students to do stage, to do apprenticeships. And they all go off into life in different professions, but they come back and stay in touch with us. Some of them are lawyers, some of them are doctors, some of them are theatrical performers or dancers or things. You know, life dishes up a lot of unexpected things. But if learning to connect your mind, your eyes, your hand, and your sensibilities at a tender age lasts a lifetime. And some of them get it, and some of them use it, and some of them are stabilized and creatively inventive based on these very early young experiences when they're sort of in troisième or seconde or doing their baccalaureate, those years in school, 16, 17, 18. And then coming back when they're in the École des Beaux-Arts or the École des Arts Décoratifs and things, and doing 2 and 3 week sort of workshops. So they've taught me a lot because they've taught me to look through their eyes.
I was just going to ask you about that, Sheila, because I can imagine what a young person would, well, in some ways I can't imagine, but that would be a profound impact on a young person to spend time in your studio in that way. But I'm wondering what this intergenerational milieu means for you as a creative person.
Well, the ground rules are we have lunch together. Everybody eats what they want, and they bring in what they want. And we get acquainted with all the, it's hard to talk about food so much, but it's important. We get acquainted with all the different cuisines of these different backgrounds and different places and different people. So even during lunch, it's a pleasure because they're different cultural.
Hmm.
But it's no surprise that I'm very linked with my oldest and best friend here in Paris is a woman called Monique Lévi-Strauss.
Yes.
And you know probably that she's the widow or was the wife of Claude Lévi-Strauss.
The great anthropologist, yes.
I put this book here to show you. She wrote the first book for me on my work when we became acquainted in the 1970s. And so I've always been sensitive to anthropology and ethnology and cultural exchanges. I think a lot of Americans are becoming increasingly so too, because I mean, you're all working together from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
I just see it on the photographs of all of you who joined us today.
Exactly.
It's
And
so
there's also a strong comparison to be made there, perhaps, Sheila, between food, which is, of course, famously The Raw and the Cooked, a great subject of Claude Lévi-Strauss, and in an analogical way as well. But
blue in the qui.
right. So there's a comparison to be made between your openness to food and cuisines, and obviously your openness to artistic traditions, textile traditions, and otherwise. I'm quite keen to start looking at some images, but I want to just ask you one last. There he is, Savage Mind. I
You
wanted to.
realize this book has just come out at the University of Chicago, a retranslation
Huh.
of this
The
book.
same book, yes.
But listen, look at the title. It doesn't work.
The new title, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, it's quite a different idea, isn't it?
It's a little bit strange, and even the graphics. I think Monique gave it to me as a gift, and she wanted to know my opinion of the graphic of the frontispiece page. Would you buy this book? I don't know. If you didn't know who Lévi-Strauss was.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Very sensitive to books, as you know.
I'm sure that I think that early edition is more my type of thing. but I was going to ask you, Sheila, about the global view of your artist. Seems like one of the most essential topics concerning your work. Well, there's we just talked about that boom a couple of weeks ago with Irma Boom, who designed it.
Hello, Stefan.
There's Stephen, yes.
You were.
Hi, Sheila.
Did people call you Stefan when you come to Paris?
Ah, bien sûr.
Well, this is going into its, I suppose Irma told you, it's going into its 6th printing at Yale University Press.
Yeah, you know, she also promised to send me one. So I have my fingers crossed to finally have that book in my library. It's fantastic.
If she doesn't come through, you let me know.
Okay. Thank you.
Because they've just sent out a letter soliciting people who want their names in the book, who want to help symbolically sponsor the book that's coming out again.
Ah.
And it doesn't imply that they have to give money. They just have to show their interest. So write to them and say you want your name in the book.
I will.
And the way they get people to sign up, I don't know if it has a religious advantage or significance, but they say it's the only contemporary art book in the Vatican Library.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Right, I remember.
That must be Irma's fault, don't you think?
You take a little credit there.
It's a collaboration.
At least a little. So Sheila, what do you think? I mean, this book is a great demonstration of it, in fact. What would you say about the multiculturalism of your experience and your work? Is there some way you can compress that into a few minutes?
What should I say about it? You mean, do I approve or not?
Well, you could start that way. Do you approve of yourself in retrospect? But you're such a famed globetrotter and drawing on so many different.
I'm not a globetrotter. I don't like to travel that much.
Well, I meant in your work, you know, that you're looking at all these different sources.
I don't like to travel because it's confusing. To wake up in different places and to realize when you wake up that you have to look at your checklist of why you're there and what you're supposed to get done. I'm very free soul. I like to just do whatever the hell I feel like doing, not somebody else's checklist. Yes. And if I travel, it means I've accepted some responsibilities because they're paying my trip.
But I guess I guess Glenn is referring to your earlier work when, of course, you were traveling to India, you were
I
traveling
never went anywhere on my own.
the Fulbright throughout
I
South
never
America.
went, it's funny, I never went any, think of me as a globetrotter, it's so ridiculous. I never went anywhere on my own.
Hmm.
I only went because someone invited me and it sounded interesting as a mission to do something. They were giving me a job to do something.
Hmm.
But I never like went to a travel agent and thought, oh, that would be a nice country to visit.
Hmm.
In my whole life, I've never traveled without something I had to do.
So you've never been a tourist in
I've
essence.
never been a tourist.
Yes. Mhm.
But of
And-
course, you are a traveler.
No,
I mean, I guess we're referring to, you know, the artistic sense of the word.
that I have a passport. I have a passport. And I've never changed my nationality. You know, I've lived here all my life in France.
You're still American.
And I still use my passport that I was born with, make it simple.
Hmm.
And I answer the phone myself. Have you noticed?
I have noticed that.
I don't go through a lot of interpreters who are with hierarchy, and I don't play the diva routine of having assistants and oui madame and no monsieur and all this.
Mhm.
I can
But
tell in 3 minutes when I answer the phone if it's interesting or not.
But Sheila, in the tradition of you know, the mid-century modernists, and I'm thinking of people like Alexander Gerard and Charles Henry Eames. I mean, of course, in the late 50s and 60s, you were traveling quite a bit, and you were learning and studying with artisans all over the world. I'm thinking about your Fulbright throughout South America. I'm thinking about your travels in
It's
India.
never been my idea to go any of those places.
Well, not that it was your idea, but that you were there and working.
There's a misconception that it's good to clear up right away.
Hmm.
And that is, I opened my mail, I answered the telephone. We used to get telegrams. We used to get, you know, all kinds of other, communications.
Mhm.
And when I went to Chile, it was because my teacher told me to go down and sign some papers he left for me in the office that he was sending me to Chile.
Yeah.
He wanted me to teach his course in the architecture school in Santiago, in Universidad Católica. Being a good, obedient student, because I was a little bit afraid of him, and I wanted to graduate, I went down and signed the papers, and then I went to the library across the street to look and see where he was sending me in an atlas. And it scared me to death because I didn't think, but it looked like it was at the bottom of the world. It was in Chile. And I thought, oh my God, if I go all the way down there, that means how am I going to get back?
I guess whether it was at the bottom of the world depends on your perspective.
Right, because little did I realize the world was round. I was still looking at an atlas.
It reminds me of that great line from The Hobbit: "If you open your front door, there's no telling where you'll be swept off to."
Yes.
Yeah,
Haven't you had that experience of
I
being
have indeed. Not in the
Oh.
past year, but
told
previously.
to go somewhere and then you try to open it immediately? Well, you open your computer now and you're trying to figure out where it is.
I think, Sheila, maybe what we're trying to get at is perhaps better put this way. You seem like a great synthesizer of things, putting things together. Certainly these earlier experiences that you did have in other places, but not just that, also intellectually, materially, aesthetically, it seems to me, and maybe more so than ever in your recent work, there's this compression of many, many different strands in the work, in your columns, for example. They seem to stand for so much.
I try to fulfill a mission. I try and analyze and be sensitive to why and where and what and for whom. I'm not going to impose my own personal obsessional involvement on everybody. I can do it for myself and in my quiet greenhouse here. But then if I go out, it's because someone's inviting me out and they must have something in mind. And I try and tune into what it is they have in mind and I try to fulfill it in sense of what their expectation might be. And that's what's caused me to get to know different cultures, different people, different attitudes, different ages. And to try and do my humble best to step up to the plate, you know, to make it happen.
Humble is a very interesting word to hear come out of your mouth. And I completely agree that there's a humility to your work. And yet it also is.
You know, I don't sign my work. Throw the slides on, Lucy.
Yeah, let's look at some pictures while we talk. That's a great idea. And Lucy, you can just go through them at a leisurely clip.
Just let them.
Yeah, let them flow.
And then anything anybody wants to see again, we can run again.
Yeah, but there's also, in addition to that humility, and maybe what you just said alludes to a kind of anonymity in historical textiles too. But there's also a great gesturalism and power and muscularity and even sometimes a swagger to the work.
Those are my granddaughters.
Running along.
Yeah. And now one's a lawyer and the other's in a design school in Barcelona. No, she's not a lawyer. She did her law studies, but she's said that wasn't for her, and she's doing classical studies.
Well, here's a good example of what I'm talking about, Sheila. This, when I say gesture, you know, through the space and the sense of scale. So it's perhaps, well, it is perhaps humble in a way, but it's also got a kind of grandeur to it. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, here I just jumped from France now. That was in Paris, the last. This is in the design Switzerland, Lausanne, no, Basel.
Mm-hmm.
Demis Danant, you know.
Yes.
Invited me to do something in the design fair in Switzerland a few years ago. And I'm taking this material and springing it on people and challenging them to think what they might be able to do with it themselves, designers. In the design fair, the big audience is not the people who come to buy things, it's people who come to want to look for ideas. Mm. And you take them home and do something with them themselves. They're designers, it's the design community. Mm. So it's a kind of camaraderie, colleagues, and sort of, I'm saying, look guys, look what I found. Mm. What do you think? What can we make with this? Go ahead and just show the, yeah, there you go. So we put up this table and sat there, and anybody wanted to sit down and discuss and talk and think and draw and play and imagine what we might do with this. So we've taken this fiber. This is pure pigment from Turkey. The pure pigment is then sent from Turkey to Germany and put into a floss consistency, then sent to the third continent over in North and South Carolina, and twisted and spun and then woven, and becomes things like awnings or boat furniture, or it becomes all kinds of different applications, but it's sunproof, waterproof, resistant. And you'll see later a photograph. I think I sent you one this morning of Houston where they've put one up.
Yeah.
In honor of the Rothko Chapel anniversary.
Yeah, in the newly reopened Houston MFA.
No, yeah. Go ahead, because it's just a sort of magical environment of color and fiber and texture. Mm. But like you have all these books behind you, Stefan. These are just bundles and ready to go for textile artists, painters, sculptors, architects. Think it through. Where do we go from here?
Well, the idea that you're presenting raw material, this is almost, for anyone to access, is very much like a library. And I think that's very powerful. It's almost a reference library of raw material, and you're there as a kind of librarian to discuss the possibilities with everyone. That's quite interesting, Sheila.
And you'll see some of the ways I've tried to use it. Here's a small show in Paris.
Could you say something a little about color, Sheila? I mean, so strong here.
Color speaks for itself. It either grabs you or alienates you. everyone has a different color. It's like food.
Again.
It's like music. You're attracted or you walk out of the room or out of the concert if it's something that you're unable to connect with.
Would you say your palette has changed over time, or your taste in colors?
I mean, from morning to night?
I meant over a longer haul than that, but perhaps in the course of a single day too, yeah.
Oh, keep going. We'll look. It probably will change as we go through.
Mm.
There, the shadow on the bricks is nice. Some people, like you mentioned color, but some people at the Venice Biennale came across this colossal color extravaganza, but instead they were more enchanted by the shadow on the wall, on the brick wall, the old brick wall that was falling apart.
Yes.
Because I wove, and you'll see, keep going, you'll maybe, you can see the brick wall, that state that was in. They gave me the worst place in the Biennale to exhibit, and it was perfect because it was the biggest contrast, you see. That's the way I ship things, so it arrives. And then someone says, when is the art coming? When are the crates arriving? With the insurance and with the proper couriers. You know, couriers is a business now in art world. The poor museums that try to do shows, their budgets get eaten by the couriers who want to travel from the museums. But anyway, so this I would send, that's my show. Now what?
Arrives in sacks.
Yep, because I also got thrown out of the Biennale in Lausanne for trying to help artists to ship their things in an economical way and not be charged. Artists sometimes when they have to exhibit are charged to send their things to the exhibit and charged even to repatriate them. And as a young artist, I thought that was really difficult. It was really hard. And so I tried to devise ways that things could be made and sent in a way that the artists who had modest means could afford to exhibit. But some of the organizers of the exhibitions didn't like that I was doing this because their relatives were running transport companies.
Oh, I see.
that's, you know, I was thrown out of the Tapestry Biennale of Lausanne because I was an agitator, right?
This was also the great time of agitations, if I'm not wrong.
defending artists who were eager to show and want to make their, do their work, but we're up against it. You have to jump a lot of hurdles as an artist or designer just to get your work out into the public domain.
I'm interested to hear you use the word designer. This is obviously a design series, design and dialogue is what we call it.
This is Carnavalet. This is the garden of the museum.
Musée Carnavalet, yeah.
Of the history of Paris.
Yes, yes. Yes, I'm interested in hearing you use the
it's
word.
That same material. You notice that I showed you the Venice Biennale?
In a new configuration.
So the sacks came here. And we took the stuff, the material. It's irreverent to call all this art stuff, but that, boils down to that. It's stuff. And so took the stuff out of the bags and we made this, we took the negative spaces. Bauhaus would have been proud because we took the negative spaces and activated the negative spaces into positive spaces.
Yeah.
With that fiber. Can you tell which is the live shrubbery and which is the fiber, right?
It's like a relief.
I think there was another photograph just before. There it is.
Yeah. Yeah. What this is making me think, Sheila, is that there's as much creativity or problem solving in the system that makes the work as the work itself. In other words, how are you going to get this thing to happen? It's kind of a design problem.
It's a basic design problem. As soon as you walk into a space, sit down and get acquainted with it because it's either your partner or your enemy. Are you going to harness it or is it going to overwhelm you and make what you do look stupid? or look banal or look insignificant? Or is it a way of joining hands and both benefiting with a win-win situation?
Do you feel the same way about materials? You have to form that alliance with them?
They won't play the game. They'll do what they want to do. And if you try and force them to do something they don't want to do, you're losing your time and their time. This is my closet
This is your closet.
of things that I don't need anymore.
So you mean that the fabrics are recycled in some way?
It's just things that I don't need anymore. So I live up on the second and third floors in the courtyard. And so I go down the stairs and take advantage every day when I go to the studio, take something I don't need anymore and say goodbye to it in a friendly way.
Oh, wonderful. Stephen said a moment ago that you're presenting the material in nearly raw form in those wonderful piles of polychromatic fiber. How do you respond to that idea that
This thing here is early work, by the way. I'll answer. I heard your questions.
Yeah.
Bamiyan, that's in the collection of the Boston Museum.
Oh,
It was in the recent show last year about women.
yeah, women take the floor. Yes.
This is in the collection of some textile, the principal textile manufacturer in Germany. He put it in his office, but he hung it in the back of him. And he had to take it down because nobody listened to his remarks in the meetings anymore.
They were staring at the work.
So it's too distracting. So that was a failure, you see. He thought I was going to enhance his presence theatrically, to sit in front of something rather funny and chaotic and amusing, and even all the customers and everybody who called on him said, "What's that?" And then they begin their discussions of what they were.
He was thoroughly
everyone's trying to sell something or push something or do something. And every 3 sentences it'd say, "Can you tell me more about that?" And he got fed up and he said, I'm going to go bankrupt if I keep this in my office. I've got to get it out of here. Do you mind if I split it up in pieces, like it's all core? So it's okay if I separate it and just use it around in different parts of the building and the factory and all, share it. Someone buys something, what do? The artist, do you sue them or you make a law? Artists do law. I've heard a lot of artists make lawsuits about the way their work is shown.
This show was fantastic in person. I had the privilege of being there, and the impression that I had was one of pure raw material, pure color, and abstraction. So to the point where we don't wonder how the thing is made, but we're kind of just confronted by it as an object. And so back to that question of raw material, can you talk a little bit about your intention here in terms of the impression of the work?
Well, let's see the next slide. Maybe it's the same thing. Well, this is a more disciplined version. Keep going. You see it's much neater and more refined and more, I call these lian, like just hang. Okay, keep going.
Hold on, Lucy. Go back one, because I want to press this point. We're not going to give up on this, Sheila. So,
raw material. The other one, go back 2, and you'll find wool in all of its glory.
Yeah.
There you go.
Exactly.
There's, it's a heyday for wool. And the rest of the one that we showed are linen, because in France, linen is king. When I lived in Mexico and other places, I was using a lot cotton and wool. Now linen in France, silk, and synthetics. A lot of the things I showed you now, Venice Biennale things, are all synthetic with the pure pigment.
So you're traversing a wide spectrum of materials.
Anything goes. Let's try.
But there's also something that happens, I think this detail shows it so well, where the material is, as it were, released. So there are moments of binding and then moments of freedom that, for me, what it does is help me appreciate the quality of that material all the more. And it seems to me like that's a very important compositional principle, if I could put it that way.
You're taking it too seriously.
Ah, okay.
It should have a random, almost whirling dervish spirit. Keep going. Let's see what happens. In other words, should I send a drawing to someone who's going to install these and show them where they go, how they go, or let it just happen? Keep going.
Yeah, let's see.
Okay, keep going.
So they're improvisatory.
They have to be participatory.
Participatory.
Remember Janelle Porter?
Sure.
She just sent me a postcard. She just sent me a postcard from Hollywood.
She did the wonderful fiber show at the ICA in Boston.
This is it.
Yeah.
What do we do though? I mean, she was brave. She got them to break into the ceiling. You see, I said I wanted to go
Right
through the ceiling. I had exhibited it at the Whitney also, going through up into the ceiling at the Whitney Biennale.
Yeah.
And I said, come on, bring it through the ceiling. She said, well, I wonder how the museum's going to feel about that. Well, give it a try. And of course, those kind of things, when you break when you trespass on the no-nos and make them into win-win, you know, for the thing and the ambiance, it sort of brings a sense of humor to the thing, where the person who's making the thing and the person who's viewing the thing, like this, the sort of interlacing, the spirit, they sort of agree to agree. It's not one prevailing. It's not the architect telling the artist or the designer what he wants in his building. He lets it happen through the dialogue and development stages, where they along together begin to make the thing. And therefore it doesn't have to be signed by the artist. It just exists on its own. You talked to me about earlier about designers. You mentioned a few: Alexander Girard, Herman Miller. I can go on with another 20 names, but was their objective to be able to have their work identified immediately, and were they signing it? I don't think so. I think they were just making it.
Well,
And then companies exploited the fact that they could use that name as a trade name almost, and increase the price, because the name started gaining validity and gaining value. I mean, this is what the auction houses do. They're all the time deciding whether the art is worth how much it'll go for at auction.
Well, for me, it brings up the question of anonymity, Sheila, and how, of course, there are many designers working behind the scenes in the kind of corporate design world. But if you choose to show your work as art, it's immediately associated with you as an individual. And you've worked in both ways in your career. The earlier work, working anonymously and kind of infiltrating companies and factories, I think is really powerful as a strategy. But then when we look at pieces like this, how do you deal with this question of anonymity and not wanting to sign your work?
Well, some of these I wove in Aubusson, the prestigious French Tapestry Center. And some of them I wove in Malta, in artisanal villages. And then I interlaced them. Who made them? Who made it? And each time I unlace it and take it apart and roll it up and send it somewhere and figure out what kind of a wall, what kind of a space, and how big it should go, it'll change. It's a way of thinking and an adaptable way of working.
So
Now,
it's
how do you put a price on that? Because that makes people nervous.
so it's a kind of strategy for arriving with work that has this this possibility for improvisation.
Yes, and it's really important to me because it's really makes it so lively and awake and challenging each time. As I say, you take a train or a plane or pick up the phone, it's a new challenge and think of it from another angle.
Yeah, and there's also the question of the collective act, right? The idea that you're collaborating with artisans that are contributing to the work, and then you're creating space, even in the display of the work, to also collaborate with the museums and the galleries. Can you talk a little bit about that?
This I hung up in, oops. Well, we can talk about it, that one again, because it'll come up again continually in the way I work. It's just, the next slide is showing something we were talking about designers. Remember Massimo Vignelli?
Of course.
Massimo and Leila Vignelli. The next one are these things that, maybe there's a better one, better photograph. Keep going. There you go. That's Madison Square Park, I think, down in Manhattan, right in front of this restaurant that was called SD26, San Domenico. Did any of you go to that restaurant or ever see that restaurant?
I can't say that I did, but I'm wondering, are you wearing Vignelli's clothing there, Sheila?
No.
No, okay. No, in this photograph, I wondered if you were wearing the.
Oh, here. I kind of influenced some of the things they were wearing.
Fantastic.
We met when we were very young, Leila and Massimo and I, and we decided, each of us, to immigrate to the other side of the world. So I'm sitting in front of the Scala in Milano talking to Massimo, having a coffee. And he and Leila are about ready to leave for the United States and try their luck. And I say, I'm leaving the United States and I'm coming to Europe. Because I've been told so many times that I'll never be a cultured woman until I know La France or Europe or Italy or history. And you've worked in London, haven't you, Glenn?
I have 8 years.
You know what I mean? You will never, as an American, you will never be a cultivated person until you know Europe.
Yeah, well, I'm still.
Now the Japanese will do the same thing to you. And the Chinese gentleman came to me in the studio yesterday and said, I'm deviating, but it's sort of on the same subject. Yes, yesterday, Chinese representative who, I won't get into personal things, but he said, this is the decade of the Chinese. This is the Chinese decade. Mm-hmm. And I know and hear from your reputation that you like to be on the crest of the wave when things are happening. And when it's crashing to the beach, you're willing to take the risks, where it crashes, because you try and get on the crest of the wave. How many times have you tried to do the right thing and you end up on the bottom of the... Anyway, I said, okay, I'll take the risk. And he's saying that it's really important that, like the Vignellis, were willing to risk as a young couple and leave their cultivated background. They went to architecture school and design school and things in Italy. They came through Chicago, I think it was, at the beginning, Chicago and New York. And they really influenced everything in design world for us in the United States, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Well, I come over here to France and I think, what am I going to do? I've got all of these hills to climb, like the French history of tapestry, Aubusson, Gobelin, all of these barriers. And I don't want to make tapestries anyway. Why am I thrown into the arena with all these tapestry stories? someone came and invited me to come and exhibit in a show in Switzerland. It was a Biennale of tapestry, and we end up being with Apakanovich, Buich, Kobayashi, all these sort of new tapestry. When tapestry left the wall and moved into space,
Right.
it became sculpture, sort of. So Vignelli and I, we always kept contact, the Vignellis and I, back and forth, and we sent our children back and forth to do stage, to do workshops in each other's workshops. His daughter came and stayed at my place. My son went to New York and worked at his place. So this was a very enriching dialogue. The design, art, graphic, textile. People more and more should cross these barriers and be fearless and fail maybe 10, 20, 30, 40% of the time, but win 60% of the time. Just by taking these risks of moving into these territories and learning. And then he says, we're doing a restaurant. What are we going to put in the restaurant, Sheila? Think it up. We have to put something in the restaurant that people will live with, because they'll come back and forth many times if they like the restaurant. And this can't be something on the wall that once they've seen the painting or the drawing or the abstract design that they're sick of already. This is what we invented to hang in. So I wondered if you ever visited the restaurant. Because the fire chief came of New York, all the cooks, because the owners of these restaurants were terrific characters. They were, now I'm going back to food, you see.
Sheila, I had a question. I'm thinking about the tradition of Americans moving abroad and working. And I guess I'm wondering, you mentioned tapestry. I'm wondering about all the other métiers in France and how those have influenced your work.
How do you like the typography?
L'artisan pratique.
Isn't this beautiful?
Yeah, absolutely.
1931.
Wow.
Okay, I'm born in 34, so this is what I was born into. This kind of thing. I think your question is answered if I sort of say, let's show you this. Can you see? All kinds of artisanal techniques of wood, clay, glass, ministry, all of the decorative.
So Sheila, do you see yourself as a practical artisan in a sense?
I see myself as a continuation of this. It's been 100 years, right? Almost.
Incredible.
So, I mean, but I love the typography, and I am happy if I can find any of these craftsmen still, new and understand how to work manually, still struggling to innovate and try and collaborate with new technology and new manufacturing and new kinds of spaces. And you can find it here. You can still find it here in Europe.
Yet an unbroken line in many respects. Those artisan traditions.
And it was inevitable with Massimo going to New York that he was, going to deal with what? He was going to deal with the metro. He was going to deal with other kinds of problems. These are an Italian designer, Italian photographer. I love photography. And I work a lot with photography and photographs. These are Paolo Raversi. Do you know Paolo Raversi, the Italian? I'm going to use these for the next show in London. And the title is, here's Houston right now. I'm going to use it. And the title is,
sorry, Sheila, I want to just correct something. I think I said this was Houston MFA, but it's actually not, is it? It's the Moody. Art Museum, isn't it? That we're looking at. Is that
That's
right?
the Moody Art Museum in Houston.
Yes. Yes.
It's the entrance of the museum that's doing the homage to Rothko, 50
Yeah.
years of the Rothko chapel.
Hmm.
I've got a really nice title for this notion. It has to do with music. I'll send it to you.
I was so struck in those photographs that you just showed, the Reversi images, the sense of your identification with the work, or when you were lying on the wonderful bed of the material.
That's by Giulia Noni, the photographer called Giulia Noni, and it was some magazine called Wallpaper.
Yes, some magazine. It's quite a magazine. But do you feel that? Do you feel that the works somehow are a part of you, or as a kind of alternative form of self-portraiture or anything like that?
They're called talking sticks.
Talking sticks.
Bâton de parole. Tribal practices are the one who holds the stick has the right to speak.
That's right.
And I sort of felt like these things were sort of embryonic representation, sort of things of having to do with pregnancy and birth, where you're not sure what's going to burst out of these forms. And so in that restaurant, I putting them up on the walls, I thought that people eating would wonder what if their meals are coming forth from those.
Oh yes, like a piñata.
Uh-huh.
That's wonderful. But also an image of fecundity.
Yes. Well, you know, when you've got it, when this was the Biennale, by the way it ended up.
Yeah.
Because I let everybody play with it and put it up for about a week or so. And then on the weekends, when the people were not there, Brazilian Dominique and I would go over there and we'd rearrange it aesthetically. We'd let the freedom reign, but then we'd hone it in when the time came before the opening to make sure it had the highest aesthetic message possible.
Yes.
Highest in the sense of the most appealing and sensitive rendition. You only get to the highest when you do all of the experimentation, though.
Yeah.
You don't bother and just do it one way, you know, once you've got your routine of only making a circle or only making a square and just perpetuating it all your life. You know, you haven't taken many risks.
That's right. So you need the randomness before the refinement.
You need the playfulness. Well, this is in the chateau out here in the Loire Valley right now, on the stairway.
It is like a sort of sense of arrival, like a creaturely inhabitation, isn't it? So many of your works. Lucy, I think maybe we should take a picture so we can see.
I'd like you to feel that if you could take it apart and redo it again another way.
Yes. So there's nothing fixed or final. It's
No.
open-ended.
It depends how talented you are as an architect or a space designer or a person who's wanting to create an environment. How talented is your vision? Can you make it into something even better, even more exciting, even more beautiful?
So there's a sense of challenge there as well. There's a sense of freedom and play. Sheila, would you mind taking some questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Viewers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Stephen, you might have one to kick off with. Do you still have one in your back pocket?
I mean, yeah, I have so many questions. It's just been fantastic just to hear from you, Sheila. Congratulations on such an incredible, constantly changing and developing career. I'm thinking about your very first exhibition, which was in my hometown of Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure of the year, but I know that you were quite a young woman at the time. And you've reached this level of freedom in your work, as you were just describing, where the work itself isn't fixed and your ideas aren't fixed, and there's this beautiful relationship to architecture and interiors, which I know are very important to you. So I wonder how you saw yourself when you were just beginning to exhibit, and there's something about the anonymity question again, but also how did you frame the work, and how did you see yourself as a young woman starting in your profession?
Can I ask where you were in Chicago?
Oh yeah, I was born on the south side of Chicago at the University of Chicago, actually. So and I studied at IIT, the new Bauhaus.
Uh-huh.
But I had the questions for you, Sheila. Come on.
I'd like to know who I'm talking to, because I know what kind of ears they are. Because, you grew up in the Art Institute of Chicago.
I did, actually. Yeah, very formative place for me. And that's where you had your first exhibition, correct?
Right. But not in any department. There was no curator who wanted it
Ah,
in their department. Because Glenn, curators have their specialities, and they have their knowledge, and they have their basis for interpreting what is happening. And there was a man called Alan Sawyer. Did you ever hear of him? He worked at the Art Institute in Chicago. He later became the director of the Textile Museum of Washington. But Alan Sawyer was, I think, a trained anthropologist. And he allowed me access to see the storerooms in the textile department one summer. And then I showed him why I wanted to see it and what I was trying to make and do. And then he said, why don't we do a small show of your work?
Mm.
Where he took a stairway as you came down to the university in the Art Institute of Chicago. Remember, there was all the armor that you walked through?
Yeah.
The display of armor, and you got all the way back into the back garden, and then it splintered off into 3 or 4 departments. So there was a landing space there, and there were a lot of vitrines. And he said, we'll put you there like a crossway in between all these different departments that people have to walk through this space in order to get to all the other departments of different. And that was my first show. And I began to realize it was going to be uphill, because who was I ever going to call to want to show my work? Because what department should I call?
Mm.
So I was going to just be out, like you're implying, out in no man's land. But guess what? No man's land is everybody's land.
Yes.
That's so well said.
And you're not stuck in someone's domain where they are the authority and they are saying yes or no to it. So you can experiment and is that a book? No. Is it not a book? No. Where are we going with this? Well, let's keep working on it, and we'll figure out in about 10 days, where we're going. It might become a book. It might become an object.
Mm.
It might become an environment. And you don't have to sign it. You don't have to sign it. That's not the objective. You see, we're in the art world all the time. I looked at cleaning my bookshelf this morning, looking for some things. I found a Whitney Biennale catalog from 2002 or 2003 or something like this. I looked at it. I could only find 3 names I recognized. So all these artists have disappeared. Who are they? Where are they? What are they doing? They're doing other professions, of course, because they couldn't make it in the sense of what they thought they were starting off to do. Right out of art school, everybody thinks they're just going to be an artist. Or be an architect or be a designer. And you start moving around and finding your way of navigating and doing things. And all these things are crossing and contributing to becoming something, another entity, which you didn't really know about or think about.
And it's
Sheila, do you mind if I
important.
make another question? Oh, sorry.
No, of course.
Get to you have in the chat, Stephen. Sorry. So this is actually a question from James Zemaitis, our colleague at R & Company, who's helped me with this Objects USA show that Sheila's represented in the course. And James asks
Do you have the
Sheila.
catalog of that show?
Sorry, say again.
Do you have the catalog of that show?
Oh, of course, yes.
This one?
The original. Yes, there it is. 1970. Yeah,
Where are all these?
you're in
people?
it.
No, but what happened to all these things?
Well, sadly, most of them are no longer living
No, but what
because
happened
you
to
were
the things?
very,
As a museum
very
person,
young.
as a museum, you think, as a museum person, you think the museum departments or what department collected them? Where are they?
Yeah, that actually we know a lot about because most of them, about half of them came to what was then the Craft Museum, which is now a Museum of Arts and Design. So they're all well cared for. And then many other museums who participated in the tour also acquired from the show. And then Johnson Wax actually took some of them too. So they're still in Racine. So they're pretty well documented.
Nobody wanted this stuff I showed.
Is that right? Really? Which is so fantastic. As we all now know. So that you had no buyers for that work at the time.
Well, I was living in France and working in France.
Yeah.
They were nice enough to put me in Objects USA.
Yes.
It was kind of fun.
Well, that's sort of what James is asking about. He asks whether you still ever go to Hastings, Nebraska, your birthplace.
I've been in my lifetime probably 7 or 8 times. I did a show there. I went back to a college that some of my ancestors founded there and did a show in Hastings College.
And do you still have family there?
I have when I visited the cemetery, there were about 30 tombstones
Hickses.
under these old oak trees. And Nebraska, some kind of television channel, whatever, we did a small film. We did a small film of visiting family farms and where my mother's father, grandfather also had the general store of Hastings, Nebraska. They went as pioneers and then founded the general store and the rest of the stuff there. It's just pretty small.
My great-grandfather had a general store in Coffeyville, Kansas.
Well,
Probably not
it's
too
competition.
Yeah, because they were competitors.
The homesteaders were going that way and they had to buy, they had to get their supplies from the general store.
Let's take another
So
question.
you're a family of homesteaders?
Well,
are you a family of homesteaders?
We're certainly not now. I think there was a little bit of homesteading happening back there in the 19th century, maybe.
Have you ever been?
Let me just ask another question, Sheila, because
have you ever been in a storm cellar?
No, but it's a powerful image, isn't it? Especially with the storm roaring across you.
Where you go down into the ground?
Yeah.
All the walls are lined with, like behind Stefan's library, they're all lined with things to eat that have been canned in, preserved, not canned, but preserved in jars.
Yes.
I remember going underground with my brother and going down and seeing all the things that were stocked and stored for the storm that was going to come someday. We're sort of living through that right now.
Yeah, that's right. All in our own storm cellars in a way.
Yeah.
Hopefully
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, it's a powerful image and very evocative. So Ashwini Bhatt, who's one of our regular viewers, says, so many of your colors evoke my home country of India for me. And then says, a few years ago, I heard an interview where you mentioned that you consider yourself a, quote, outsider artist and how you wear it like a badge of honor and like the freedom that it gives you. And she says reading that was so inspirational for her and would love you to talk about
it. Well, in order to do justice to that statement, I should say something contradictory, that I'm an insider.
And I suppose both are true. Yeah.
Well, it's taken 70 years, but now I'm an insider.
I think the inside has shifted a lot so that you can be in it. That
But,
you change that inside.
I'm afraid, but I'm a realist, also practical. And I know that as soon as you think you're an insider, guess what? There's someone down at the gate down below that's going to let you in on the secret that we're in a new technological age where a lot of, things are happening in the last period right now that we're living through. And you're going to be left on the doorstep all by yourself because the rest of the world's moving on. So don't just sit there and think of yourself as an insider because you're going to be left out on the porch, waiting for someone to bring you a sandwich.
If you're lucky. So Ashwini is saying we should continue this conversation for another 5 hours, and I kind of agree, but we're not really meant to do that. So Stephen, any last thoughts?
I just think it's such a wonderful way to end, because obviously Sheila's already thinking about how to become an outsider again. Or maybe it's a kind of constant meditation, right? Between inside and outside.
Is that something you've just made, Sheila?
That's something I made this week. It's made out of mohair.
Wonderful.
Right now, how do you keep it together?
That color.
And it's double face, double-sided. And the other thing that all the textile wizards in the world are always concerned about are the lisières, are the salvages. I don't know, the graphic designers have their vocabulary, right? But the weaving world is always concerned about the lisière, the salvage. So here we've got 4 salvages. And that's one of the things that usually distinguishes all my small works, that they all have 4 salvages. And that's like working on a piece of paper, because it's a predefined size. If you work with 4 salvages, it's not like on a loom where you just make something and cut it off arbitrarily whenever you want.
Right.
Is to define your size of your paper, and then you work on it.
Or canvas, like a painting, right?
Or a canvas.
Yeah.
Here's one. Yeah. Here's it predefined. I'll show you the last one before we sign off.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh, Sheila.
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
And it's funny because there's a front and back, but it's like doing a drawing, so you know how big it is from the beginning. Here's one.
Glenn, I think our last question has to be, when can we visit? I'm sure that's what everyone wants to know. When can we visit you, Sheila?
What we do is we make a run. Let's pick a place and make a date and see who shows in a place. Define a place, pick out a place, like in a hat, the name of a place.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a date, and see who shows.
Well, we'll be there for sure.
Take it from there.
Like that. That is sort of the spirit. Yeah, that's the sort of the spirit in which we conducted this entire interview series. In a funny way, we're all scattered across the world having this conversation together and somehow converging as if by miracle.
I'm going to try and come to your 101. What's going to be your 101?
I was just going to say, thank you. Good segue, Sheila. My goodness.
Yeah.
You're professional. We are going to have Dorte Mandrup, the great Danish architect, with us. And she's going to be talking about her work with what she calls irreplaceable places. And she's another wonderful creative spirit and mind. So please come back a week from today. I'll be the interviewer. And we're off on our next 100, right, Stephen?
Absolutely.
We'll have you back for our 200th, Sheila. It'll be a tradition.
Thank you so much, Sheila. Thank you so much.
Don't make promises you can't keep.
Okay, have a good evening.